What's up guys, HellaBass here. Today I'm going to explain to you why you don't want to use straight fluoro on your spinning rods. I'm going to give you 5 key reasons why you want to make the switch if you haven't already. Then I'm going to go over some of my typical spinning rod setups. If you're already on board with braid to fluoro, let me know in the chat. Let me know you already made the switch. We're good to go. Even if you're already a convert though, stick around. I think there's going to be some nuggets you'll pick up later in this video that'll help you maybe better understand all the advantages of braid to fluoro for efficient spinning rods. Based on the poll on my community tab, most of you have already made the switch, but if you're new to the channel and you're still fishing straight fluoro or straight mono for a lot of techniques, then watch this video and I bet you're going to make the switch when you're done. I was actually pretty slow to make this change quite a while ago. I was a straight fluoro for a long time. I was hesitant. I was leery of the connection knot. I didn't know, I always thought, do I really want one extra knot that could potentially fail between me and the fish? That was a hurdle for me at first, but now that I've done it 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I'm almost completely converted almost everything to braid to fluoro on all my spinning rod setups, and I'm a true believer, and I think it's really the only way to go for 90, 95+% of situations. About the only times that I will go straight fluoro are maybe like shallow cranking with like shad wraps and things like that, or in super snaggy, rocky situations where you really need to be like snapping your line all the time and you need that more stretch to maybe get it free, or if you're breaking too many leaders, it becomes out of an issue to keep retying. Oh, that's nice. Sirens during the video. Perfect. One of the key assumptions here is that you've already learned a good connection knot. So whether that's the Albright knot, the Alberto knot, the FG knot, the Yakutun knot, there's lots of good knots. Uni to uni. As long as you have confidence in one that you're really good at, then you're in good shape and this is going to be perfect for you. If not, once you've watched the rest of this video, you're going to want to probably find a video, learn how to tie a knot, and be really good. I'll probably do some knot videos in the future, so subscribe if you haven't already, and you won't miss those videos. So like I said, if you don't have one of those knots down pat, that'll be your next step after this video, is to find a good knot to knot connection video and watch that after this. So what does braid to fluoro mean? Braid to fluoro typically means you're running a braid. Typically for most spinning stuff, I'm running 8, 10, or 12 pound light, often high vis braid, and then I'm going to run anywhere from a 2 to 20 foot fluorocarbon leader. It could be mono as well, but that is the basic setup. So we're going to cover all the advantages, all the reasons, all the advantages to do that coming up right now. So cost and flexibility are probably one of the really big keys for why you would want to do this. Even an inexpensive spool of monofilament or fluorocarbon is going to cost you $8, $10, $12. Good fluorocarbon's $20 to $30, and premium fluorocarbon can be close to $40 a spool. Assuming you're only going to get 1, 2, maybe 3 refills out of a spool of line, that can cost you anywhere between $5 and $20 every time you respool a line on your rod if you go straight mono or straight fluorocarbon. And when you're finesse fishing with 6, 8, 10 pound fluorocarbon, you need to respool a lot because that line gets weak in the sun, fishing it stretches out, abrasion, line twist, things like that is going to cause you to change it a lot, or you're going to start getting a lot of coiling and memory, which also will cause you to change it. You know, if you fish tournaments, whether you fish tournaments or not, you're going to be changing your line several times a season if you fish a lot, fishing straight fluorocarbon or monofilament. Whereas even with really expensive fluorocarbon like this Tatsu, if you run at a 20-foot leader, that leader will only cost you about $1.25 to switch out. So you could switch out multiple times a day, before every day you go fishing, all the time, and you could, it's like 20 to 1 even with most premium fluorocarbon. If you go down to basic like Seaguar Red Label, Sunline Assassin, or a monofilament, we're talking about 25 to 50 cents for a liter. So you can really fish way nicer fluorocarbon and use very short sections of it, get better performance, and save a ton of money. Plus, it's a pretty good time saver. It takes quite a while to strip all the line off a reel and respool the thing. Once you get good at a connection knot, you can retie a new leader in just a few minutes or maybe even less than a minute once you're really good at it. So this is something you can do that'll reduce your tournament prep, your fun fishing prep the night before, or things that you can do out in the boat that'll save you time and get you more casts and more fishing. And a good braid might be $20, $30 for a spool, but this braid I've had on this reel for probably 2 or 3 seasons now, and it's still pretty good. You can reverse the braid if you want to and get more life out of it, but honestly, about the only time I'll change my braid is when I've redone the connection knot so many times that my spool's gotten low and I've lost casting distance. $20 braid, you get multiple spools out of it. That will last you at least 1 season if you fish a ton, if you're a guy, a tournament angler. If you don't fish a ton, you might get multiple years out of a spool of braid, and then you're just changing out those leaders. All right. Number 2, talked about this a little bit earlier, line management. We've all dealt with it. We've all been there. Huge wind knots. When you fish straight fluorocarbon, straight mono, no matter how limp, how premium of monofilament copolymer fluorocarbon you use, you're going to get line twist no matter what you do. Even if you're flipping over the bail manually, over time you will get wind knots, you will get kinks, it will coil up, you will get memory from the line. That almost goes away with braid. I rarely ever have any issues with that. That's something you won't have to deal with. It makes your combos more reliable. It helps you spend less time untangling lines. And like I said, you're going to spend less time respooling, less time fighting with your line. It's just a much more reliable system. On top of that, light braid offers super ultra superior casting distance. This stuff flies off the spool. Without that memory, super thin diameter, you can cast this a mile. So it doesn't matter if you're casting hair jigs,
right on the
small Kitech swim baits, grubs, tubes, drop shots, nets. Casting distance goes way up, and that's awesome. If you're interested in any of the stuff we covered today, rods, reels, lines, fluorocarbon, mono, braid, I'll put links in the description below where you can find all that information. Number 4, on those mega long casts, hook sets, you wouldn't believe how much line stretch there is in 6 and 8, 10-pound mono or fluorocarbon on a really long hook set. Do me a favor. If you don't believe me, get a buddy, have him go out and hold the end of your line, walk about 20 yards away. You hold a lure, a weight, tie it to your hand, and have him set as hard as he can with a spinning rod in 8-pound fishing line on a fluoro, mono, or copolymer. He will barely move your hand. There is so much line stretch on a long cast, you are gonna miss fish that clamp down on your bait, and when you pull on it, they spit it out and you're never gonna get the hook on them. To get a really good hook set, to make sure you're always driving that hook through on this light line, braid to fluoro makes such a huge difference. Your hookups go way up. Now, you might need to adjust your rods to be slightly slower action, more moderate action with the braid. But you can fine tune this system by changing the length of your fluoro or mono leaders, and that will give you some shock absorption, but with the majority of your line being braid, reducing that stretch, you're gonna get amazing hookups. It's a really solid system for that. Lastly, you're gonna notice increased sensitivity. Having a big chunk of braid with a short to moderate length fluorocarbon leader gives you unbelievable increase in sensitivity. It's really the best of both worlds. You still have the low visibility of the fluorocarbon line where the fish has at the part of your bait come through the water column, but you get the strength and sensitivity of the braid on a hook set and for feeling. It's an amazing setup. It's really the best of both worlds. You're gonna feel more bites, you're gonna feel more bottom transitions, you're gonna have a better idea what your bait is doing all the time. You're gonna be able to tell when there's weeds on it, when your swim bait's fouled, whatever it is. It's just a much better setup and you're much more in tune with what your bait's doing, and when a fish has your bait, you just have to try it. So as you can see, I've got just about all my spinning rods spooled up with braid. Some of them high vis, some of them dark green. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about when I'll go short leaders, when I go long leaders, when I go dark braid, when I go high vis braid. For most of my normal finesse stuff like drop shots and neds, it's pretty standard. I'm gonna go with about a 7 to 15 foot fluorocarbon leader. So basically 1 to 2 rod lengths. So typically when my bait is right here, the knot will be just outside of my reel. That's my normal setup. I do that for a few reasons. They're gonna be short to moderate casts with this type of stuff. It gives me enough stretch on shorter casts and things like that, that when I'm fighting the fish close, I get the stretch of the fluorocarbon. I get a good amount of length of invisibility. Plus, it allows me to retie a lot of times and work into that leader and still have quite a bit of leader left. I can fish it down to 3, 4, 5 feet in length and still keep using that leader without having to retie the leader and retying, the hook or the weight as often as I want. Let's talk about the times I go shorter and heavier line. When I'm wacky rig fishing around docks, shaky heads, fishing around heavy cover, I will go shorter. I'll go to sometimes a 1, 2, 3, 4 foot leader, depending on what I'm doing. And sometimes I'll go 10, 12, maybe even 15-pound fluorocarbon to a heavier, maybe like 20-pound braid. That's when I'm fishing around heavy cover. When I'm going around pilings, when I'm cutting through the braid, through the weeds, I don't want a big fluorocarbon leader. I just want that slight amount of visibility right by the rod. Sometimes I'll go straight blade, and I'll often use a darker, moss green because I'm using a shorter leader. I can usually see what my line's doing in shallow water. Plus, sometimes I'll just go straight braid if it's really nasty and things like that, and water visibility's down. Then I like the dark green braid. So that's when I'll go shorter. That's when I'll go heavier. It's typically a little bit heavier rod, fishing Senkos, weightless, small jigs, small plastics, finesse around shallow heavy cover. Times that I'll go longer. Spy baits, sometimes small finesse swim baits like Kitex and things like that, and swimmers, and hair jigs. Sometimes I'll go closer to 20 feet of fluorocarbon because I'm making long casts, and that is a bait that I'm going to count down and bring through the water column. So the fish, that line is going to come pendling them out, coming through the water column in front of my bait. So that, you know, a drop shot or a Ned, your bait's typically going to come down right in front of the fish. They're not going to see the main line, the braid. Coming through the water column, I'm going to have a longer fluorocarbon leader, giving more leadway where I'm going to have that you know, less visible line. Plus the sink rate is going to help some of those baits stay down. And some of those just need a little more shock absorption, a little more leader length, a little more stretch, which is good for some of those baits like spy baits. Ultimately, it just comes down to what you want to do with your bait, your rig. How much stretch do you want? How much visibility do you want? What do you want your bait to do? When is the fish going to see your bait? Just think about the application you're doing with your bait, determine the best line size and leader length, and go from there. If I haven't convinced you to make the switch to braided fluoro, I'd love to know the techniques or the reasons why down in the comments below, why you haven't made the stretch or why you aren't going to make the stretch to braided fluoro. If you're interested in a bunch more rod and reel information and combos and techniques specific to about rods, watch one of these two next videos right here.